programs that you will never even know what is it that they will achieve. As the EFF, we reject this, and we feel that our people deserve better, and our people deserve a new deal in skills. Another big problem that has followed the South African local government era, it is the local government SETA. This SETA has been not once, but on several occasions been committed to a rehab. It has been not once, on several occasions, been given best persons to lead it. But because of the inherent inability of the initial collective that sits in that SETA, they are driven, they are planning the downfall of each and every senior executive that comes into this SETA.
Honourable Member, your time
This
is up.
SETA will never be re-engineered, and it will never be able to be of use to any local government.
Honourable Mbata,
We
can
reject
you take
all
your
of them.
seat? IFP.
Honourable Chair.
Honourable Ndlozi, what is the point of order?
Yeah, Honourable Chairperson, we are of the opinion that when the House is sitting, no committee should be sitting concurrently. And we're being sent messages that we must go attend a subcommittee on the review of rules. And we've got business in the House. Can you please give an instruction that the committee must be dissolved until we are done as the National Assembly? Because we're expected for all of us, if the National Assembly is sitting, to be here.
I will communicate with the national
Thank you.
table, and they will discuss with the chairperson concerned. IFP.
Thank you, Honourable Chairperson. Having served in the Portfolio Committee for Higher Education and Training, I know that the Honourable Minister has been very concerned about the performance of all the sitters. I know that the reasons for which these sitters were established are very noble indeed. But their performance, most of them, if not all of them, has been very disappointing. The two sitters we are talking about, the local government sitter and the services sitter, have been found by the Auditor General as the worst performing sitters. The local government is struggling with skilled artisans because the sitter, which is supposed to be supplying the local government with skilled people, is not doing that. If we read the report in the ATC, you'll find that instead of doing their work, these sitters or those in charge are paying themselves huge bonuses. As we talk now, the recommendation by the Portfolio Committee was that these officials be charged, but we haven't heard anything about what action has been taken by the department. I'm waiting for any sane person to give me a justification why these sitters should not, I'm lacking the adjective, the correct adjective, scrapped. Scrapped, yeah, I think that's the best adjective. I sympathize with you, Honourable Minister, that you mean well, but these sitters are really disappointing you. I'm sure you agree with us that instead of wasting taxpayers' money, they should be scrapped. Don't you think so, Honourable Minister?
On a point of order, Chairperson.
Thank you, Honourable Mponchane. Honourable Minister.
I think Honourable Mponchane mustn't cause confusion in the House. We are not talking about sweethearts, we are talking about sitters.
Thank you, Honourable Minister.
Did I say sweethearts? I thought I was hearing myself saying sitters.
Okay. Okay, Honourable Mponchane, you can proceed.
I know my friend there. I know my friend there, you know. I would be
Your
telling
time will be up
I would be
soon.
telling you a story when together with him we went to Cuba, how he used to use the sweeteners, you know.
Order, honorable members. Honorable members, I'm told that by the NA table that the subcommittee is preparing for the Rules Committee that's sitting tomorrow. So I'm sure they'll be communicating with relevant parties accordingly. I was just responding to the matter that I said I would clarify on.
Honorable Chairperson, respectfully we are submitting. When we are here in the National Assembly, we get prejudiced that we can't participate as well as members of the subcommittee because we've got business in the House. This is a multi-party democracy parliament and we're appealing. They can wait. We have the last debate that is taking place through you. Give an instruction that they halt the process until we are done with the House business. It's very simple.
Order, honorable member. I think that matter, as indicated, can further be discussed with the chairperson of the committee together with the different whips of parties.
No.
Honorable Malima, are you rising on a point of order? Okay, what's the point of order?
You know, we represent some of the smallest parties here. And they will have to be on the other side at the same time this side. And it is practically impossible, Chairperson. We are pleading, please, we want to focus on the business of this parliament here. Please, let's dissolve that committee so that even the smallest parties can participate in these proceedings or those proceedings. That's what we're appealing for.
Thank you, honorable members. That's exactly why I was communicating with the NA table, and together with them and the chair of the committee, they will discuss with the respective parties and find an amicable solution. Thank you. Honorable Kubisa.
Chairperson, the NFP concurs with the PC that the delays in the appointment of the new board of the NSA by the minister is a cause for concern. It is of concern that the NSF is still under the DHET. The view that the NSF be made a legal persona is supported by the NFP. This will allow a clear space for accountability. The NSF has not yet developed performance indicators to track its beneficiaries as to whether the funded learners are succeeding in the funded skills development projects. The time taken to start building TVET colleges is concerning. The building of TVET colleges must be fast-tracked. Some sitters are not performing the way that they should, and the NFP is concerned about that. And also the fact that the NFP is worried that there are sitters that still have a backlog of outstanding certificates in the current year. Why are they not releasing certificates? And that must be done with immediate effect. Chairperson, thank you very much.
Are there any declarations? Honorable Kekana.
Honorable Chair, we in the ANC acknowledge all the discrepancies that are pointed out, but we're saying that there is hope in education, and actually the situation has improved because we're producing students that are achieving well, but we do acknowledge that we still have a long way to go because we come from a situation where, for example, in NSFAS, it's responsibility. A lot of students come from disadvantaged backgrounds and can't afford from their own families. They need to be funded to achieve education. But, I mean, we don't lose hope, and we are confident that we're going to achieve to use education to combat
On a point of order, Chair.
Order, Honorable Kekane, can you take a seat? Honorable Chief Whip.
Look, I'm from outside. There's a committee which is sitting there when the House is in session. The parliamentary rules and procedure and process do not allow that another committee must sit there when the session is sitting now. We rightfully should be participating there to determine the rules process, and we want to participate here, all of us. It's not allowed. We must dissolve that committee or dissolve this house.
Thank you, Honorable Shibambo. As indicated, the matter you are raising was raised earlier by your honorable members of your party. I did respond initially, and indeed there was again another request, which I communicated to the NA table and also to the House to say I'll request that the NA table, together with the chair of that specific committee, together with yourself as the chief whip of the EFF, to have a discussion so that we can find the amicable reason. But also I would like to advise members that committees, when they need to meet, even when the House is sitting, they apply to the House chairperson of committees, and they are then given permission to do so. And when the House has to vote, when a division is called, those members are released by their committees to come and vote.
But Chair, we are saying that the committee is sitting now. The issue is not being attended to.
Chairperson,
the committee is sitting there discussing important issues that relate to rules.
Honorable,
and you are depriving us an opportunity to discuss rules there because we must be here.
Honorable
as well.
Shibambo, can I request that you do as I have requested?
No, but you are disattending us now. Like, as I'm talking here, there's a committee which is going on there.
That's
discussing
exactly
rules which all of us must contribute on.
That's exactly what I'm advising. That's why I said I'm asking you, the NA table, together with the chairperson of the committee, to discuss the matter that you are raising so that you can resolve how we proceed.
We spoke to the whips of the ANC, the deputy chief whip now. We went there. They are continuing with the committee. We have done everything else that we are saying we must do. What else do we do now? Because we went there, they are continuing with the committee when we are sitting here.
Honorable Shibambo, can you take a seat? I will ask the secretary of the NA table to attend to
the committee is continuing there.
Order, honorable
member. And we want to participate there.
Honorable Shibambo, I have noted your concern.
But let's agree to dissolve that committee first. And
Honorable Shibambo, we cannot, as the House on our sitting, just pronounce on the rules that we now adopt impromptu. We cannot. That is why I outlined the process on how permission is sought by the committees to sit. You indeed...
There was no permission sought.
Order.
There was no permission sought because as members of that committee we were told about it.
Honorable Shibambo, can you please take your seat? Can you please take your seat? Honorable Ndlozi.
Sorry, Slalo.
Honorable Ndlozi.
Sekunegama futhi la yokhona sebebiza Honorable Shibambo ngokuthi usigantsonzo. Ngifuna ukwazi ukuthi sinayo usigantsonzo lana na.
Order.
Asilungiseni bafethu. Iyaqala lento futhi.
Honorable Kawula, can you take your seat?
Angizwe ke manje ukuthi uthini ngale usigantsonzo esenimusho manje. Asifuni njalo lonto. Asifuni leyo nto.
Honorable Kawula, Honorable Ndlozi, can you please take your seat?
Honorable Chair, I'm raising
Honorable
a point of order.
Can you please take your seat so that I finish the matter I was addressing with your chief whip?
Okay.
Thank you very much. I have indeed asked honorable members that Honorable Chief Whip of the EFF consult with the NA table and the chairperson of the Rules Committee. Raise the concerns which they've raised in this House so that an amicable decision can be reached on how to move forward. You indeed have come back to say the process is still continuing. You asked this House to take a decision. And I was advising you that unfortunately, it is not within this House competence to make rules here without those having been processed by the Rules Committee. And I would advise, again, the NA table, they will send their representative here to go and consult with yourself and the chair of the committee so that indeed an amicable decision is found.
Honorable Chair, can we correct a point of information? it is not consistent. The committee was scheduled to sit at 5 because it anticipated that the National Assembly would be done at 5. Now, clearly we are not done at 5. So, as to when did the application to the chairperson happen, it can't be consistent. So, it's not true that they made an application to sit at the same time as the National Assembly because they anticipated, we sit in that committee, we know, we anticipated that at 5 would have been done. So I'm providing this information because it's prejudicial.
It's very...
that committee is going on without other members that must participate in it, and they're discussing rules on how to prevent the disruptions in the House. We must all form part of that discussion. It favors everyone in here because everybody disrupts the House here.
Order, honorable member, precisely because of that concern, that is why I'm advising the manner in which we do, so that the matter is addressed. That's why I was appealing that the chief whip of the EFF, together with the NA table and the chairperson, go outside, and I see now the deputy chief whip of the ANC is also offering to go outside so that the matter can be amicably resolved. Can we move? Honorable order, honorable member, honorable members, honorable Kaula, can you take a seat? Order. Honorable member Kaula, you have raised a point of order. Unfortunately, you have not cited the member who had pronounced the name Uban.
It's Honorable Sbusiso from Mpumalanga.
Honorable Sbusiso, did you say the word that you have said?
I don't remember saying those words.
Order. Honorable members, I think we do need to take into consideration that all of us are honorable members here and we must be respectful of one another. Can we proceed, Honorable Kekane, to finish your declaration?
Chair,
Honorable Kekane, you may proceed.
Chair, I was saying the education matters are receiving the fullest attention of the department and the Portfolio Committee of Higher Education. And that where there are shortcomings, for example, the issue of NSFAS, which is by and large not of our own making, it is affected by the performance of the economy of the country, and where there are limitation of finances, we definitely make sure that we want to make the best of the little that we have. With SETAs, the local government and services SETAs it is receiving our closest monitoring because we really want to see our SETAs performing, because that is the only chance to link our institution, technical and vocational colleges with private sector or industry. So we really want to make them perform and link our students with industry and colleges so as we can have students that serve the needs of the economy of the country. Personally, I must say I haven't lost confidence. Students are performing well, those that are given the opportunity, though there is still a lot of room for improvement. Thanks very much.
Thank you, honorable members. Honorable members, the motion is that the report on the higher education and training on 2013 to 2014 annual report of National Skills Fund and National Skills Authority be adopted. Are there any objections? There are no objections. Oh, there are. You were very quiet the way you said it. I now put the question. Those in favor will say aye. And those against will say no. I think the ayes have it.
Honorable Chair, if you could just note the objection of the EFF.
The objection of the EFF will be noted.
Slalo.
Yes.
Awubhala ukuthi nathi ngathi asihambisana nayo.
The objection of the IFP will be noted. I now, honorable members, honorable Chief Whip, I would ask you once again of the majority party.
I thought that I put both, because the declaration were done on both as well.
Thank you, Chief Whip. The declarations having been done, the motion is that the report on the 2013-2014 annual report of local government sector, education and training authority and services sector, education and training authority be adopted. Are there any objections? There being objections, I now put the question. Those in favor will say aye, and those against will say no. I think the ayes have it.
House Chairperson, will you note the objection of the Democratic Alliance?
The objection of the DA is noted.
Please note the objection of the EFF.
The objection of the EFF is noted.
Agbare voorsitter, ook die beswaar van die Vryheidsfront Plus.
The objection of the EFF is noted.
Agbare voorsitter. Ons besware asseblief.
Objection of the IFP is also noted. The objection of the NFP is noted. This brings us to the end of the reports. The Secretary will now put the next order.
Honorable Chairperson, we need the report from the table staff about the happenings of that committee.
Thank you very much, Honorable Ndlozi.
Because we don't want to disrupt the debate. We want to hear that we're moving on or we're deciding on dissolving the House. So we can go and monitor the rules that will make sure the Speaker and the table staff never disrupt Parliament again.
Precisely. Once we are advised, we will inform the House.
No, Honorable Chairperson, I'm proposing that we determine that before.
Chairperson, Honorable Ndlozi, I have
Honorable House Chairperson, may I address you on the matter of that subcommittee?
Okay, Honorable Deputy Chief Whip.
Thanks, Honorable House Chairperson. Again, we are being held at ransom by the EFF. What I can say is that that committee, for it to sit at 5 o'clock, an application was made to the chair of chairs, to the chair of committees, and it was approved. We approved it as well. So now we went outside to discuss this matter in good faith, of course, but Honorable Shibambu insisted on going into that committee room. That is where we were debating this matter. So now they said they are going to adjourn that meeting, of which is unfair for them to do so because all parties are represented in that meeting. And we were saying that the EFF can send one member to go there and represent them. We cannot continue like this, that a party like the EFF is always holding us at ransom, not to do our work as members of Parliament.
Thank you,
and also they are violating our rights to serve the people who elected us to this Parliament.
Thank you, Honorable Deputy Chief Whip. I think, honorable members, I think,
No,
Honorable
Honorable
Malima,
Chair,
I will
can
recognize
I
you.
address you? Can
Can
I address you before you make a ruling?
Can I just
No,
respond?
but she has just
Order.
made a very wrong
Honorable
statement
Malima.
which must be responded
Honorable
to.
Malima, can you please take a seat?
No, but can I speak and
I
respond
will
to her before you
recognize
make...
you. I will recognize
No,
you.
I want to respond
Honorable
to her
Malima.
before you allowed her to speak.
Honorable
You
Malima,
allowed her
I will
to
allow
speak.
you to speak. Can you
But
please take
you
a
would have
seat?
made a ruling before you hear me. Can you hear me out? Can you hear me out?
Honorable
Don't
Malima.
say no, man. You have no
Honorable
option,
Malima,
man.
can
you are
you
going
please
to listen.
order?
You have no option.
Honorable Malima, I will recognize you, but can you please take your seat?
But can I be heard before
Can
you make
you
a
take
ruling?
your seat?
Honorable Chair, she spoke
Honorable
to you.
Malima.
She cannot speak and not
Honorable
be challenged.
Malima, I had
want to challenge
recognized the
what she
Deputy
said.
Chief Whip. Can you take a seat?
But I want to challenge what she said.
Seat. Honorable Malima, can you please take your seat? Honorable members, a question having been asked on progress, the Deputy Chief Whip asked to respond on the matter. And from her response is that indeed the committee is adjourning and it's coming back to proceed in the House. So having heard that response, I'm sure the House will be allowed to continue. Honorable Malima, what's your point of order?
No, Chair. It is extremely wrong to suggest that the EFF is holding this House at ransom. Because we have a right to express ourselves if we are not happy with certain processes. And I addressed you earlier that it is actually unfair for small parties to have two meetings taking place at the same time. And if you are not persuaded, you must rule otherwise. But that is the point we have raised. And if the meeting is now adjourned, it means you are persuaded and you are agreeing with us. That is not holding the House at
Honorable
ransom.
Member.
That is persuasion.
Can you take your seat? Honorable members, again, I think we need to appreciate what our rule says. I have indicated, Honorable Shibambo, can you take a seat?
But Chairperson,
I'm
you send me
responding.
outside to go and deal with the process. I must give you a report.
Honorable Shibambo.
Yes.
Can you take your seat?
Are you going to recognize me?
Can you take your seat?
Are you going to recognize me?
Can you please take your seat?
Are you going to recognize me?
Honorable Shibambo.
Are you going to recognize me?
Can you please take
but
your
seat? I'm
seat?
asking you a simple question. Are you going to recognize me?
Honorable Shibambo, I asked you to take your seat.
Are you going to recognize me?
Can you
Chair?
allow me?
But you must make a
Can you
commitment.
allow me to actually address the House? Honorable members, Honorable Malima, precisely on the issue you are raising, we did advise the House on the processes that we were going to follow to address your matter. Such processes has been undertaken in part led by the Chief Whip, who then went outside and consulted. And I had asked the National Assembly table to deal with the matters accordingly. And as we have heard the report, the matter has been addressed and every member is back on the House. Can I therefore allow the meeting to continue?
Chair, the information I've just provided now is incorrect. I'm from the committee there. We went to sit in the committee to propose that the committee cannot continue when the House is in session. And the committee people are refusing it. The chair of the committee proposed that they must all come back here. But certain ANC deployees, they are saying that they cannot come here because they want to deprive us of an opportunity to participate in that process. They want to make rules about
Honorable Member.
participation.
Can we then order, Honorable Shibambo, I've heard you, and that's why the NA table...
Punt van orde.
I will recognize you. Right. Honorable Mulder, Honorable Shibambo, can you take your seat? Sorry, Groenewald, I'm sorry.
Goed, agbare voorsitter, ek dink hoe hierdie probleem opgelos kan word is dat ek doen 'n beroep op die hoofsweep van die EFF om te sorg dat al hulle lede hier is, want ek sien ons omtrent net 50% hier en dit is lyk my die probleem hoekom hulle nie 'n lid kan afstaan om by 'n komitee te wees nie. So die hoofsweep van die EFF moet sy werk doen en sorg dat hulle lede hier is dat hulle dan almal kan deelneem.
Order, honorable members. I will now ask the secretary to read the next order.
Chairperson, Chair, there's an issue which we have said must be resolved here.
The issue can't be resolved in this meeting.
You can't convene two committees on top of each
Order,
other.
Honorable Shibambo.
Particularly when the session is sitting now. The National Assembly is in session.
Honorable Shibambo.
And there's a committee which is discussing rules there. What rules are they discussing? Because
Honorable
we have to be part of that process. But we must conclude here first.
Honorable Shibambo, as indicated earlier, this august House cannot make the rules or change the processes to the rules on how committees operate.
No.
I have
Chair,
advised.
You make a commitment that we must go and deal those issues there. Why are you now turning on that issue?
What I'm saying, Honorable Shibambo, what I'm saying is that this House, you can't expect this House to change rules about meetings and requests and applications. Hence, I said the NA table together with yourself and the chairperson of the committee must resolve this matter. If the matter, Honorable Shibambo,
let me assist you.
Honorable Shibambo,
Let me assist you.
Honorable Shibambo, if the matter has not been resolved, we will continue to persuade members in that committee to resolve the matter. So you can't you can't assist me.
But I'm assisting you because I went outside. The committee there is insisting on going ahead when the session is sitting now.
Honorable Shibambo.
And there was a directive.
So what is your assistance? What's your assistance?
You must give a directive that committee must be dissolved and will continue here.
Order. Then it means we don't understand the processes and procedures around which we work in this House. And I will therefore ask you to respectfully take your seat while we continue to engage on the matter. Can I ask the Secretary
Honorable
to read
Chair,
the
before
next
the Secretary
order?
reads, may I please... it's not true that we don't enjoy the protection of this House in as far as concurrent meetings are called when the National Assembly is sitting. It's not true. We are requesting with yourself, we are requesting with the Chief Whip, Deputy Chief Whip of the ANC came in here and said we have agreed to dissolve the House, to dissolve the committee. And information comes that is not the case. And you are just leaving it like that.
No one
it's
has
you
left
who is
the
being
matter.
inconsistent, Honorable Chairperson.
Honorable
we are
Josie.
requesting that we want to form part of that process. And there is an agreement that we must be able to all form that part of that process even when it's necessary. And we are saying, can we please be allowed by
can you please
withholding until the al-Bashir debate is done?
Order, honorable
it's not
members.
a vote, it's a debate.
Honorable members, I don't think you have understood what I said. I said since the matter is not resolved, the processes I've indicated earlier should continue to find an amicable resolution on the matter. So what do you mean when you say we have just thrown our hands on the issue?
Because the decision to allow them to go is part of the presiding officers. The presiding officers decide that through the House chairperson that you are going to have a meeting when the National Assembly is sitting. So yourselves as people who have decided, we are told now. Earlier on I said there was never such an application. The Deputy Chief Whip says you have allowed for that committee to go on. So we are pleading with you as the power that allowed that committee to go on to please let them suspend the process until we are able to go there. That's the procedure of the House.
The unfortunate part is that you listen selectively. I had said committees apply to the House chair of committees. I have never said they apply to the presiding officers. I said chairpersons of committees for their meetings apply to the House chairperson of committees. And can you please listen? That processes have been done. You have indicated your displeasure in that you would want to participate in the proceedings of the House. And I've outlined how we must continue to assist you in resolving the matter. So I am not sure, Honorable Member, seated here, what more do you want us to do besides that? Can I ask the Secretary to read the next order?
Chair. Honorable Chair.
Secretary, can you proceed to read?
Honorable Chair. Honorable Chair.
Can you proceed to read?
Honorable Chair. But Chairperson, there's a person on the floor. Why do you insist the Secretary must read? Please, I must be respected as well here. You must not take us for granted, please, man. We are members of this House. When a member stands up and say Honorable Chair, you must recognize that member. You. Please don't do that.
Can you take a seat?
But you must always respect
Can you take a seat, Honorable Shibambo? Honorable Shibambo, equally, when the chairperson or any presiding officer addresses the House, honorable members must listen.
Yeah,
so
Chair,
it's equally that respect you want to be accorded, the presiding officers must be accorded. Order, honorable member, you're doing precisely what is wrong. Allow me to respond. I was responding to your chief whip.
No, I was talking to you and then
order, honorable member.
You did not respect
I
me.
was responding to
and
your
I don't
chief
appreciate
whip.
that. Can I speak now? The deputy chief whip of the ANC came here and said there's an agreement that that meeting must be adjourned. And yourself, you said then the matter is resolved. Now you
Honorable member, I don't think you really are listening because the matter is not closed. You are not.
No, I'm listening.
You are not, because I said there's a process that this matter must continue to be addressed. So can you please take your seat?
That's not
Honorable Secretary, can you please take your next order?
Honorable Chair.
Debate on matter of public importance.
You can scream, you can do whatever. I have a right to speak here. You can scream, you can do whatever. I don't care.
Honorable Mukhalapa.
Yes, I don't care. Honorable Deputy Speaker.
What are you raising on, Honorable Member?
On the same matter. Deputy Speaker, I think you there as chairpersons, you like to complicate things unnecessarily. Comrade, Honorable Mbuyiseni Ndlozi, he is part of that sub-rule committee. And he confirmed that they've agreed that after this meeting, that meeting will continue. I don't understand what is the problem of dissolving that committee and come and conclude the matters here and proceed. Because we want to be part and parcel of that sub-rule committee too.
Okay.
Speaker.
Honorable Mukhalapa, please take your seat. Take your podium.
But, Honorable Deputy Speaker. Deputy Speaker.
Yes.
There's a point of order which is raised by the DSG here. And why do you just ignore it without... There's a request that we've made that the committee on the rules...
Honorable Chief
should
Whip
not continue
of the EFF.
As long as this session is still on. We must allow the National Assembly to finish its business, and all other businesses and committees of Parliament will sit afterwards.
Honorable
because
Shivambo.
We want to participate in both, and in terms of the accepted practice, a house sitting cannot be doubled by another committee sitting elsewhere. Why do you want to impose that on us even if it's not allowed?
Honorable Shivambo, I respectfully would like to draw to your attention that please stop ignoring the injunctions of the chair. Stop completely ignoring the request that those kind of decisions are not to be made in the House. The programming committee, the Chief Whips Forum, is where the decisions of this nature are made. If you did not get joy there, you can't bring it here in a manner in which you are doing it. You have repeatedly, several of you, raised concerns to which you were addressed. You are refusing to accept those addressed. You only want your answer. Now, the House cannot be run that way, and I would like to suggest to you that you do not proceed on that direction, that the decisions about committee meetings and how they are done has been explained sufficiently, that we cannot take any other route other than that one. So I would like us to proceed with the decisions of the House, to proceed with the debate. Honorable Mukhalapa, please proceed. Sorry?
Thank you, Honorable Deputy Speaker.
No, it's okay. It's done.
This debate happens at a shameful time in South African history. We are here to get answers as to how government stooped so low and actively chose to take the moral low ground and allow a wanted man to escape accountability for crimes against humanity, war crimes, and genocide. Human rights should be the cornerstone of South African foreign
honorable
policy.
members, order. Proceed, honorable member.
Human rights should be the cornerstone of South African foreign policy. Only through a firm commitment to justice and the rule of law and the promotion of international law will we achieve a stable and prosperous African continent. Section 165, subsection 5 of our Constitution clearly stipulates that an order or decision issued by a court binds all persons to whom and organs of states to which it applies. This means the executive was duty-bound by our Constitution to comply with the order that Mr. al-Bashir should not leave until the court has decided whether South Africa was to arrest him as per the warrants issued by the International Criminal Court. By not complying with this order, the executive is quite simply in contempt of court. The question now is, why did the government frequently ignore our own court and abandon our human rights and rule of law based constitution and foreign policy?
Honorable Mokhalapa, please take your seat. Honorable members, I would like to apologize for not having done this right at the beginning. I should have started by pointing out that Rule 67 calls us that we must responsibly address matters that are before the courts without reference to their merits or demerits. We can discuss everything else around those matters without any reference to the merits or demerits of the case. If we do that, we are in contempt of our own rules and the relationship we have set and the rules that we ourselves have pointed out. So we would like to point that out as a guiding way in the manner in which we deal with these discussions. We do want to point out that even if we may not maybe point out at this to every one of the speakers who are going to speak, we will review the statements made before the House so that we take appropriate remedies to ensure that we do not ever have to violate the rules that we have made for ourselves.
Deputy Speaker, may I address you
Yes,
on Rule 67?
Yes.
Deputy Speaker, I would submit to you that the Rule 67 does not apply in this matter. The matter has already been before the court. The court has handed down a judgment in this matter. The only thing that is outstanding is an affidavit that the court has instructed a minister to provide. There is no way any discussion on any matter today in this House around the case is going to prejudice the outcome of a judicial matter. Now, we've had rulings in the Constitutional Court, most notably in the MIDI television matter, which puts Rule 67 in serious constitutional problems, which is why in the review of the rules we have excluded it. And I would suggest to you today that if one looks at the rulings taken in the House, and if one refers to the Hansard of 1998 and the first session on page 208, it's very clear there that the intention is never to stifle debate in the House. Now, the Honourable Makhalapa is not touching on the merits of the matter, and even if he were to do so, it would not influence the outcome of a case because the judge has already made a judgment in it. So I would submit to you, Deputy Chair, that you abide by the ruling and the handed down in the Hansard then, which was then confirmed in the House. If one looks at the Hansard of Wednesday, the 18th of March this year, in which the Speaker dealt with the sub judice rule quite extensively in this House, this matter is not before the courts, and I would ask you to not limit speakers having a full and proper discussion. And it's important in a democracy that this House expresses itself on this matter, and I would ask that that not be limited. We have a right to freedom of speech, It's entrenched in the Constitution, and that trumps anything that Rule 67 can provide.
Deputy Speaker.
Yes, Honourable Member.
The Honourable Chief Whip of the Opposition is not correct. The matter is still before the courts. The Gauteng North High Court gave an order. It hasn't even given its reasons yet. Those reasons are only being delivered tomorrow.
Honourable members, thank you, Honourable Deputy Minister. Honourable members, honourable members, the rules of the House are adjudicated by the presiding officers. I have pointed out to you that this matter needs us to discuss it, but we must be careful because in my opinion and my understanding of where the situation is, that we cannot go into the merits or demerits of that matter. And as Chief Whip, what you have just said is part of the rule. Don't just look at part of the rule, look at the entirety of the rule. And the part you commented on is exactly what I'm saying you must do, including the rest that says don't go into areas that are yet to be decided. On the basis, so I am saying to you, we will come back to you on the ruling on this matter. Honourable Mukhalapa, proceed.
Thank you, Honourable Deputy
You are not
Speaker.
making the rules. We are adjudicating the rules here. And Honourable Member, Honourable Mukhalapa, speak.
Thank you, Honourable Deputy Speaker. South Africa is a signatory to the Rome Statutes and has domesticated this into our own domestic law through ratification and promulgation of an act called the South Africa's Implementation of the Rome Statutes of the International Criminal Court in 2002. The executive has directly violated parliamentary authority by not adhering to our international obligations. It must then be asked, what is the purpose of this parliament in ratifying treaties when the executive decides on a whim to defy them? Mr. al-Bashir should have been arrested because we are morally, legally, and constitutionally duty-bound to comply with the domestic law and international obligations. The ANC government, led by Jacob Zuma, has committed a crime of assisting a wanted man to run from the law. Let us for a moment think about what allowing Mr. al-Bashir to evade the law means to the 300,000 people who were murdered and the 2.5 million people who were displaced in Darfur by Mr. al-Bashir. This saga has dented our moral standing and now tarnished our previous title as champions of human rights. With increasing haste, the executive branch of government seems to show no regard for the rule of law or any of the constitutional principles we have jealously guarded for more than 20 years. How does President Zuma take advice from the likes of Mr. Mugabe and protect Mr. al-Bashir? The answer is that birds of the same feather flag and flock together, and President Zuma flouts the law of our country with the same impunity as this man seemed to do. There are many questions unanswered about this said chapter, and the DA will not rest until the truth is exposed. Ultimately, it is the people of South Africa and Sudan who are the losers because the executive has demonstrated that it has not any regard for the loss of life and displacements of millions of Africans at the hands of one man. The Minister of International Relations and Cooperation claims that she will not appear before the committee to brief it on al-Bashir debacle because the matter is sub judice. This simply isn't true and is just more thinly veiled pretext to avoid accountability. This is what we have come to expect from the members of the executive who choose to spuriously apply rules and when it suits them. South Africa has a lot of work to do if we are to redeem our moral standing and international responsibility. The DA's values of freedom, fairness, and opportunity means that we believe that the government should at all times act honestly, transparently, and in the best interest of all South Africans. The people of South Africa have the power to make our country a shining beacon of Africa and the world again. The government under President Zuma has failed in its duty to uphold the Constitution, has failed the people of South Africa, and failed those who were murdered and displaced in Darfur.
Your time
Shame
is
on
expired.
you.
Honourable Member, your time is expired. Honourable Deputy Minister of Cooperative and Traditional Affairs, responsible for Traditional Affairs.
Thank you, Deputy Speaker, Ministers, Deputy Ministers, Honourable Members, South Africans, good evening. Unfortunately, the sponsor or the proposer of the motion is not here. We are reliably informed that he's somewhere in the United States of America and probably consulting his brothers and sisters in the liberal group on the project they call the African Project, which was confirmed in a meeting between their former leader, Ellen Zille, and Henry Kissinger, when he said, "You are our beacon of hope on Africa, UDA," simply because they won on a project of liberal agenda, which is anti-majoritarian, which is also about regime change. Good luck on him in those consultations. The African National Congress welcomes the debate on this matter arising out of the recent attendance of the President of the Republic of Sudan, His Excellency Omar al-Bashir, to the just held 25th Summit of the African Union Heads of States and Government in Johannesburg. We welcome the debate because probably engaged, it holds the possibility for our country to expand her horizon about the complexities of international law, the imperatives and the practice of foreign relations, and thereby invigorate policy, and more specifically the law. In this context, we know that the matter concerning President Bashir's attendance of the AU summit is currently before the courts, and as a consequence, there is a limit to the extent to which we, as parliamentarians, can debate the details. And we agree with you, the many South Africans who say, let's respect the processes of the law. Bearing this fact in mind, the ANC is of the view that the debate we are having, or rather should have, is one about the challenges of achieving peace, justice and reconciliation on one hand, and the pursuit of international justice as represented by the International Criminal Court. And we want to reinstate the ANC noble policies of holding on to the human rights culture and the rule of law. And we do not, by any chance, promote any impunity, and we take the matters of what happened in Darfur with the 300,000 killed and over 2.5 million people displaced, and indeed, those who have done it must still account. When he addressed the OAU meeting of heads of states and government as President of the Democratic South Africa for the first time on the 13th of June 1994 in Tunis, Tunisia, President Nelson Mandela said, among other things, and I quote, "Finally, at this summit meeting in Tunis, we shall remove our agenda the consideration of the question of apartheid South Africa. Where South Africa appears on the agenda again, it will be because we want to discuss what its contribution shall be to the making of the new African Renaissance. Let it be because we want to discuss what materials it will supply for the rebuilding of the African city of Carthage. One epoch with its historic task has come to an end. Surely another commences with its own challenges. Africa cries out for a new birth. Carthage awaits the restoration of its glory," close quote. The ANC enters the debate informed by the consideration and commitment President Mandela made to the OAU in 1994. In particular, we assert, 1, South Africa has national interests, which must at all times defend and pursue within the context of international solidarity and the renewal of Africa in all its elements. 2, South Africa has an obligation to strengthen the continent's intergovernmental organizations, and to contribute to the reform of institutions of global governance. 3, diplomacy has established norms and conventions which cannot be ignored, lest we promulgate untenable precedences which may serve to defeat other valued objectives in the diplomatic and political realms. And lastly, we remain committed to the rule of law, human rights in their broad sense, as captured in the Constitution of the Republic and as Resolution 42 of the Mangaung ANC National Conference stated, we condone impunity, authoritarian and violent regimes. In its 2009 report, the AU High-Level Panel on Darfur, chaired by former President Thabo Mbeki, described the nature of the Darfurian conflict as Sudanese crisis in Darfur. For its part, the Eastern Sudan Peace Agreement recognizes in its preamble that political, social, and economic marginalization constitutes the core problem in Eastern Sudan. This serves to give the lie to the commonly advanced platitude that it is often advanced about the primary contradiction of Sudan's and the Darfur conflict as one between Africans on the other hand and Arabs on the other. In the Sudanese context, as well as with elsewhere on the continent, the descriptions African and Arab are but national appellations of identity any more than they are genetic. The ANC believes that our country should continue to support the African Union's honest and sustained efforts at finding peaceful solutions to South Sudan's conflicts and efforts towards democratization. We know that while over and above what has already been done, the AU is continuing to mediate between the parties to the war in Blue Nile, South Kordofan, and Darfur states. Sudan will also soon convene a national dialogue to discuss questions of democratization, the economy, the national identity, and the international relations. For these processes to succeed, President Bashir is, like FW de Klerk, during our processes of negotiation in this country, one of the critical players. The Sudanese people therefore need him in Khartoum and not in The Hague. Sudan shares borders with 7 African countries, amongst them Central African Republic, South Sudan and Libya, which faces peace and security and challenges. It is obvious, therefore, that if something went wrong in Sudan, it will not only affect Sudan, but it will also affect the larger part of the neighborhood and serves to exacerbate already existing peace and security challenges in the region. Peace is important for the continent. The matters of justice can only work where there is peace. Chairperson, only on, I refer to the African Union report, which investigated how best to address the issues of accountability and combating impunity on the one hand and peace, healing and reconciliation on the other. I therefore want to state here that President al-Bashir was invited to the AU by the AU. He was not visiting South Africa. He was not on a state visit here. He had attended a meeting that is constituted by an act of the African Union, which was being hosted in South Africa. In the 70 years of the existence of the UN, the USA has never attempted to arrest any leader. And there were serious and notorious dictators even at the time, but there were not a hand in any of them, because the law of immunity, the law of immunity is the law that was agreed in 1961 that all countries agreed to at Vienna, that this law must be allowed because we are now living in a world that must reach consensus. Even if you hate some, you have to meet with them in order to seek solutions. So therefore, the meeting of the AU had immunity, which was not challenged by anybody. For 10 days, that was published, and no one objected to it until when he had arrived in the country. So we are not going to be using the AU, therefore, to be the platform where we arrest leaders. That will never happen, such as the UN was never used to arrest any leader. However, we are then saying that the issues in Darfur are serious, and we agree with you. However, don't use the EU, because the day it happens, it means that's the death of the EU. The day it happens within the UN, it means the UN will never gather again, because leaders will be afraid to go there because they will be arrested. And we don't want such to be created anywhere in the world, so that we can then pursue the matters that are raised, and then that is why we say we'll then follow it up. However, this is what we are standing for. This therefore cannot be done using the EU or any one of our intergovernmental organizations as a sneer to arrest leaders who attend meetings and submit. Most importantly in this regard, and in this reference to our cause, the demand that South Africa must have arrested President Bashir while he's attending the AU summit illustrated the contempt that some hold on Africa and Africans. The demand is never made of the UN, the US government, which also called on us to cooperate with the IEC, and yet the US is not even acceding to the IEC itself. And therefore, as the African National Congress, we want to make the following pronouncement that we call on the reform of the ICC. We went in voluntarily. The option of going out voluntarily still is open, because all countries are not forced to be in the IEC. So South Africa went in there when we signed the protocol in 1998 and when we acceded the instrument in 2003, because we wanted to lead and we thought everybody will follow, but not everybody followed. And as a result, the ICC is losing its direction, its credibility, is being undermined because not everybody wants to go into it. Secondly, we are calling on the United Nations Security Council to no longer have powers of referring matters to the ICC, because in it sit countries that are refusing to accede to the instrument, but they've got the power to say so and so must go, and when it's about them, they then veto. So therefore, it's not a fair instrument. Therefore, we say the Rome Statute must therefore begin to reform on that. Until everybody in the UN Security Council is a member, then we can allow them then to can go into it. So that reform we call. Second reform, that we need to remove the article that's volunteer to go in. If all countries can go in, and we must replace it and say all must be in the ICC, then it will become an objective and instrument that we need. For so long as it's just a volunteer, others going in and others not going in, therefore it will lose its credibility. And we are therefore calling for that particular reform that all must go in. And therefore the ANC reserve the right to raise some of these particular reform packages, present them, and at the particular point, if they are rejected, will have no other option and review our membership of the ICC. And we thank you very much on that one.
Thank you, Honourable Minister. Honourable Shivambo.
Thank you very much, Deputy Speaker. Look, the reality is that we currently have a political crisis, and this is due to the lack of the ANC's understanding of an otherwise sophisticated intra-African and intra-continental inadequacies on how to handle international conflict, peace, and justice. I think maybe we must give context in terms of what are the available options in terms of what happened now. On the 3rd of June 1991, 51 heads of state and government met in Abuja to sign the Abuja Treaty, which established the African Economic Community. And under Article 7 of that treaty, there's an establishment of organs of the African Economic Community, the Assembly of Heads of State and Government, the Council of Ministers, the Pan-African Parliament, the Commission on Social and Economic Affairs. But most importantly, the African Court of Justice. All these other organs of the African Economic Community have been established, but the African Court of Justice has not been fully established. Why? Because there's no decisive and clear leadership from South Africa, from all the parties in the African Union, which was going to hold all African leaders accountable on issues that relate to peace and violation of human rights. So we have got a lawless continent, and therefore allowing space for the International Criminals Court for Africans to come and persecute and prosecute Africans. we do not agree with the selective prosecution of the ICC for Africans, because it looks like it has existed only for Africans since its establishment. And also it was naive for whoever took a government to court to think that it can be wise to arrest a head of state here in South Africa. It was going to lead to instability in the origin country where he came from. It was going to even threaten our security as South Africa. But also it was going to lead to the undermining of the stature of South Africa in the international context. Now, if the ICC has to be trusted by everyone else involved, it should take decisive action in arresting the Prime Minister of Morocco, who continues to colonially occupy the Western Sahara. The ICC should arrest George Bush for the illegal war in Iraq. The ICC should arrest Tony Blair for the illegal war in Iraq. It should arrest Benjamin Netanyahu for the continued devastation of Palestine. It must arrest Barack Obama and President Zuma for colluding to kill Muammar Gaddafi in Libya. It's a matter of fact that it was through that collision that they killed Muammar Gaddafi, who was the visionary in terms of African unity. It should take those action in terms of dealing with those issues. But also it must arrest Cyril Ramaphosa for killing workers in Marikana. That is what the ICC should be focusing on. And it must go and arrest these people in their countries of origins. If ICC wants al-Bashir, it must go and fetch him in Khartoum. That is where he is found, not anywhere else. But we do not agree as the EFF with the deliberate disregard of the court orders by the ANC government, because it sets a precedent for the future defiance of courts in terms of what should happen. There could have been a much more sophisticated way to deal with the issue of al-Bashir than just utter defiance and disregard of the courts of law. But we say that Africans must rise up to establish their own institutions of accountability, to hold each other accountable, so that we do not end up in a situation where conflict is intensified, where peace is threatened due to narrow and not focused pursuit of justice. Thank you very much.
Honorable Mwango.
Thank you, Honorable Deputy Speaker. The recent well-planned, coordinated and executed government plot and plan to ensure that the ICC most wanted man and standing Sudanese president, Omar al-Bashir, enter and exit South Africa without fear of arrest and detention, despite an ICC standing warrant of arrest, despite South Africa being a signatory to the Rome Statute voluntarily, and despite being in contempt of our own High Court order, speaks volumes about the current government thinking around our Constitution, the rule of law, international law, and international treaties to which South Africa is a signatory. To put it quite simply, this government does not care. The rule of law...
Honorable Mwango, please take your seat for a moment. There's a point the member wants to raise. Honorable member, what's the point of order?
No, just to suggest that the Speaker at the podium has preempted the courts in this regard. There's been no decision that has found any contempt on the part of anybody in this matter as yet. And I ask that you look at this matter, Deputy Speaker.
Yes. Honorable member, Honorable Mwango, I did warn right at the beginning that you're not supposed to do that, and that please avoid doing that, and you should desist from doing so, because otherwise you are being in contempt not only of your own rules, but of the relationship we're supposed to have with matters before the court.
Thank you, Honorable Deputy Speaker. Fortunately, I actually am not in contempt of any rule of law. The rule of law, the supremacy of the Constitution, international law, and treaties are all subject to the overriding will of the President and his executive. If any law is in contravention to that will, it is simply invalid to the extent that it is contrary. This message is now loud and clear to all South Africans and to the rest of the world. Reports emerging over the last few days allege that it was agreed beforehand between South Africa and Sudan that President Bashir will be protected by any and all means necessary, which clearly also included trampling on the constitution of this country and the rule of law. The meeting was reportedly attended by the minister in the presidency, the Minister of International Relations, the Minister of Defense, the Minister of State Security, and the Minister of Police, who agreed that President Bashir will be afforded maximum protection were he to travel to South Africa for the summit. This was confirmed by President Robert Mugabe, another potential ICC candidate, at a subsequent press conference when he advised that he had spoken with President Zuma, who assured him that South Africa would not arrest al-Bashir and that all delegates at the conference would be granted immunity. This clearly illustrates the blatant and intentional disregard by the Honorable President Zuma and his executive for the rule of law in South Africa. And in so doing, this government has struck a mighty blow to the legitimacy of our courts in South Africa. And how does government expect our citizens to respect and uphold the decisions of our judiciary when they so openly and with great contempt and malice of forethought trounce upon
Honorable Member,
court
your time
orders?
has expired. Honorable Ngongo, you and all the members who have spoken on this platform, we have raised concerns about your violating the rules that you yourself have agreed to before. And despite our warning, you have proceeded to do so. I do wish to let you know that we are going to be coming back to you, each one of you who have said so that we talk about it. But the appropriate structures of Parliament will deal with it. Thank you very much, Honorable Member. Your time has expired, sir. Honorable Shelembe.
Honorable Deputy Speaker and honorable members, the first and foremost founding principle of the National Freedom Party is to uphold and defend the Constitution of the Republic of South Africa, to adhere to the provision of the Constitution, to implement the provision of the Constitution and strengthen our democracy. In light of our founding principle, we cannot condone or agree with the sentiments and scandalous conduct of the ANC-led government. Deputy Speaker, the debate today is not about the perceived bias of the ICC, and the debate is not about the guilty or innocence of Sudanese President al-Bashir. The debate today is about the implications of the violation of our Constitution by the very same government who has been entrusted to protect and uphold it, the very same Constitution which the ANC was instrumental in drafting, with our Deputy President being one of the chief negotiators. Our Constitution clearly states out the effect of South Africa ratifying international instrument, and clearly states that once an international instrument has been ratified, it takes precedence over the domestic law. The government was well aware of that when it ratified the Rome Statute. And the government was well aware of its obligation under Article 59, Clause 1, to give effect to an ICC warrant of arrest if called upon to do so. The ANC-led government was aware that a warrant of arrest has been issued for President al-Bashir when he was invited to attend the AU summit. And the unfolding events suggest that the ANC-led government has deliberately calculated and planned to evade its obligation under the Rome Statute. In doing so, the ANC-led government was well aware that they would be violating the Constitution, yet they went right ahead regardless. Deputy Speaker, we cannot pick and choose which obligations we will honor once we have entered into agreement, nor can we pick and choose which provision of our Constitution we wish to obey. By allowing the Sudanese president access to South Africa and then ensuring that he is able to leave despite an order from the court, suggests that we have a lawless regime. It suggests a regime that is corrupt in the deepest and most profound way. It also suggests that we have a regime which has a disregard for the fundamental principle that democracy has to be hedged by a constitution which provides limits on what government can do. The calculated and deliberate act of violating the constitution of the Republic of South Africa did little for the South African government's reputation as a defender of the rule of law and has unmasked the true ANC and leadership for what it is. I thank you.
Honorable Holomisa.
Honorable Deputy Speaker and honorable members, the United Democratic Movement deplores anyone responsible for the denial of human rights to the people of our country, the continent, and the world over. We firmly stand with the victims of atrocities against humanity and strongly believe that whoever is found to be abusing human rights must face the full might of the law. However, the South African policy is suspect and has once again exposed us. It is not the first time we experience this situation. Recently, we were accused to have connived with the Western Bloc against Libya. We need to clarify our geopolitical strategy unambiguously. We need an overarching foreign policy approach that unites the nation and clearly articulates our own interests and defend our constitutional democracy. However, if the ICC is to be a credible instrument for international justice, a common approach to international justice has to be established, and it must bind all nations equally, including the most powerful states. The United Nations Security Council, which recommended that the court try President Bashir in 2005 and received a vote of 11 in favor with only 4 abstentions, should find other means at their disposal to assist the IEC and not hijack the AU in our country. After all, the United Nations Security Council, to which we are all affiliated through its peacekeeping force, is currently patrolling the streets of Darfur. Why bangambambi pa?
Honorable Mulder.
Geachte adjunkspreker, die vraag is, wat is goeie leierskap? 'n Leier moet die toekoms antisipeer en vroegtydig stappe doen in belang van sy organisasie om skade vir sy organisasie te voorkom. 'n Goeie leier moet dus oor die bult kan sien as moeilikheid kom en betyds reageer. President Zuma aan die ANC-regering het in hierdie geval dit nie gedoen nie en Suid-Afrika groot skade aangerig. Hoekom? Wat is die feite? Feit nommer 1. The ANC government signed, ratified and internationalized by way of legislation the Rome ICC Convention. Thus they are bound and honored to honor it. Tweede feit. 'n Lasbrief vir al-Bashir se regtersname is uitgereik en is wêreldwyd geldig, veral ook in Suid-Afrika as 'n land wat die Rome Statuut onderteken het. En die derde feit, al-Bashir kom in Suid-Afrika aan. Natuurlik is daar argumente dat die internasionale strafhof slegs Afrika teiken. Daar is nie twyfel oor nie. Die huidige 9 konfliksituasies wat die hof ondersoek, is almal op Afrika gemik en dit is nie reg nie. Maar ek sê leierskap beteken jy moet die probleme antisipeer. As die regering dan nie met die strafhof saamstem nie soos vandag hier gesê is, dan moes ons vroegtydig onttrek daaruit dat dit nie gebeur nie, dit word nou voorgestel. As dit dan nie wil onttrek daaruit nie, dan moes ons aan Bashir 'n boodskap gestuur het en gesê het ons het 'n probleem, ons is nog lid daarvan, ons gaan in 'n krisissituasie wees, moenie kom hier na toe kom nie. Die regering het nie een van die twee gedoen nie. Wat doen hulle? Hulle beroep hulle op immuniteit vir staatshoofde. Nou vra ek die vraag, wie was die regsadviseurs vir die president hieroor geadviseer het? artikel 27 van die Rome Statuut bepaal dat jou status as staatshoof jou nie immuniteit teen hofjurisdiksie gee nie. Het die ANC dit geweet? Ek dink so. 4 Junie 2002 sit ons in hierdie raad en ons argumenteer oor die implementering van die Statuut van Rome in hierdie parlement. Advokaat Johnny de Lange sê namens die ANC in die debat, en ek haal hom aan. Another very important principle spelled out in this legislation is that heads of state, heads of government and members of parliament will not be able to raise a defense that they are heads of state. The Honourable Landers that still here says in the same debate, for perpetrators of genocide, crimes against humanity and war crimes, the world has suddenly become a small place and the number of safe havens has been drastically reduced. So die ANC weet wat die feite is daarmee saam. Nou sê hulle, ja, maar Bashir het skelm die land uitgevlug. Meneer, het hy skelm oor die Limpopo rivier in die nag gegaan? Nee, hy vertrek van 'n waterkloof 'n militêre sleutelpunt. Nou sê ek, as hy daarvan vertrek en die regering weet dit nie, is hulle uiters onbevoeg. As hulle dit wel geweet het, dan is dit 'n berekende besluit om die hof te verontagsaam. Dis al twee sit ons in gevaarlike grondwetlike plekke. So, forget about FIFA. The al-Bashir crisis makes the FIFA version look like a Sunday school picnic. No other executive act has ever exposed the ANC as a human rights violator on such a grand scale to the whole world. Ons gaan die prys betaal hiervoor vir baie jare nog. Ek dank u.
Thank you, Deputy Speaker. When our country ratified the Rome Statutes in 2002-2003, we were not compelled by anybody. We did so of our own accord. And we did so because of our steadfast commitment to cherish human rights, to prevent genocide, and act against those who committed such heinous crimes. All of this was known to the President and his executive. So when President Zuma's government gave President al-Bashir an assurance that he could come to South Africa with legal immunity, it took an express decision to transgress the law of our land and international law. When the President and some of his cabinet ministers defied the order of the courts not to allow President al-Bashir to slip out of the country while it considered the case, they acted in contempt and in direct violation of the authority of our judicial authority. Now, al-Bashir, it is not our view that al-Bashir is guilty of anything. It is our view that he must go and appear before an open, fair judicial authority to hear evidence against him and then to reply and prove his innocence. That's what we want. And that must be done because you should have asked those questions when we signed and ratified in this house. If we did not want to obey this thing, we should have taken action to then reverse our commitment to this thing. This thing that's been done in the name of the people of South Africa is a serious crime. The leadership, President Zuma and his cabinet, and those who colluded with this thing, do not deserve to lead us. They have failed to uphold the constitution of our land. The oaths you made mean nothing. You lied to us. You said you'd uphold the constitution, uphold the law, and be the example. You have misled the people of our country. And now we are ashamed before the nations of the world. You don't agree with this?
Honorable Deputy Speaker.
Yes, Honorable Member.
The Honorable Member just said that we lied. We lied about upholding the Constitution.
Yeah, we'll come back to that. We'll come back to that. Honorable Minister.
Honorable Chairperson, honorable members of the House, we are proud members of the African National Congress. And the decisions that were taken were a collective decision of the cabinet of President Jacob Zuma who leads the African National Congress. Chairperson and honorable members, today we are inspired by the visit of the Cuban Five, and therefore a quote from Fidel Castro should not come as a surprise. It will come as a surprise for those who do not know how did we get here. In 1953, Fidel Castro, while defending himself, stated, "I know that imprisonment will be harder for me. It has been for everyone, filled with cowardly threats and hideous cruelty. I do not fear prison, as I do not fear the fury of the miserable tyrant who took the lives of 70 of my comrades. Condemn it does not matter. History will absolve me." Chairperson, as we today debate this matter, I particularly recall this statement, especially because I'm thinking of all the condemnation and the noise that has been made by those who are bent on distorting our hard-earned commitments to human rights and respect for the rule of law. We say to you, history will absolve us. Speaker, South Africa's track record in contributing to finding lasting peaceful solutions to the challenges faced by the continent speaks for itself. And again, I will say proudly, history will absolve us. From its inception in 1962, the Organization of the African Unity was founded to promote the unity and cohesion of the continent, and more specifically, to rid the continent of colonialism and apartheid. The road has never been easy, neither did we think it was going to be easy. From our interventions in Burundi peace process, the DRC and the Great Lakes, to our facilitation process in Zimbabwe, Lesotho, Madagascar, and ongoing efforts to resolve the conflict in South Sudan, as led by the Deputy Cyril Ramaphosa as a special envoy to South Sudan, are indicative of our commitment to the promotion of peace, stability, and development in the continent. We do this because South Africa's developmental trajectory is inextricably linked to that of our continent. Furthermore, our foreign policy is directly premised on the prioritization of the African agenda, and we continue to redouble our efforts towards the realization of an integrated, prosperous, and peaceful Africa, driven by its own citizens, representing a dynamic force in the global arena. The socio-economic development of the continent and her ability to resolve post-colonial conflicts has exercised the AU from its inception, because as Africans, we recognize that peace and stability are an integral part of Africa's renewal. From a mediation point of view, the attempt to superordinate the justice element over all others serves counterproductive, ends as the belligerents have no incentive to settle disputes for fear that they will be locked up at the day after there's a resolution of the conflict. It was appreciation of this reality, may I repeat this. It was appreciation of this reality that informed the African National Congress to make necessary accommodation to the apartheid leaders, who, by the way, had we taken the route otherwise, some of the members of this House would not be sitting where they are sitting right now. And indeed, Africa's newest state, the Republic of South Sudan, would not be in existence today had the parties placed the issue of justice above all others. This does not mean that there is no role for justice for victims of conflict. It means that recognizing the complexities, which I know many of the members who sit in this House have got no clue of the complexities of the African continent. It is best to address the question of justice in the context of a political settlement. Speaker, it is important for us as Africans to learn from each other on peace-building efforts as South Africans, we might have made more emphasis on justice than peace. If that had been the case, I repeat again, some of the members who are proudly called honorable members today would have not been sitting in this house today. We must also recognize that part of the challenges facing that region that we are talking about today and the continent overall today is still premised on colonial injustices imposed on our people. As a continent, we therefore remain resolute to our common cause of peace, security, and development, and the collective nature in which we have always endeavored to achieve our development. We continue to support our Commission and its organs in efforts to create a better Africa and a better world. Speaker, I wish to remind this House that South Africa was instrumental in the establishment of the International Criminal Court. We are one of the 123 members of the Rome Statute, of which 34 are African member states, and this, in fact, makes the largest number of signatories to the ICC from the African continent. This certainly reaffirms the continent's commitment to peace, human rights, and upholding the rule of law against perpetrators of human rights, war crimes, and crimes against humanity. Largely as a result of our own efforts, again, many of the members who sit in this House have never bothered to follow our efforts when it comes to the issues of the African Union. They can today focus on President al-Bashir. If we were to ask them about other issues that are related to the African continent and the challenges of the African continent, they will never have an answer for that. As African member states, we must increase our efforts in strengthening our own institutions. In particular, the African Court on Human and People's Rights, and more countries must ratify the protocol to ensure that our people gain confidence in our institutions and that we find African solutions that best address African challenges. And I'm sure, honorable members, some members on the side of the House wish we were talking about the EU rather than the AU. We are here talking about the AU. Speaker, it should be recalled that upon the issuance of the warrant of arrest by the ICC for President al-Bashir in 2009, the African Union submitted a request to the United Nations Security Council requesting a deferral of the ruling of the ICC in terms of Article 16 of the Rome Statute, which allows the UN Security Council to do so as an entity that referred the case to the ICC. The decision by the AU to submit the request for deferral was informed by the peace initiative in the Sudan, which in the view of the AU was at a delicate stage in building confidence among parties. Confidence amongst parties is some of the parties on the other side of the House never understand what it means. With President al-Bashir being instrumental in that, in the wisdom of the AU, having Bashir indicted would have jeopardized the process. It should be recalled, honorable members, that South Africa was and still is involved in the peace initiative through her troops and negotiations, and as such, South Africa was instrumental in the decision to get deferral by the ICC through the United Nations. Chairperson, in July 2012, at its 12th Ordinary Summit held in Sirte, which by the way I attended, the African Union took a decision that would not cooperate with the ICC. I repeat, the African Union took a decision that it would not cooperate with the ICC. This decision was taken as a result of the ICC's refusal to address legitimate and fundamental concerns of the AU regarding some of its indictments, especially the one of a President al-Bashir, and some of the members that have spoken here have said so. The AU pronounced that it deeply regrets that the request by the African Union to the UN Security Council to defer the proceedings initiated against President Bashir of the Sudan in accordance with Article 16 of the Rome Statute of ICC has neither been heard nor acted upon, and in this regard reiterates his request to the UN Security Council Furthermore, it decides that in view of the fact that the request by the African Union has never been acted upon, I wonder if members have bothered themselves about that, the AU member states shall not
Honourable
cooperate
Minister,
with the Rome Statute of 19. Honourable Speaker, can these members really think we are going to arrest a head of state? They must think again.
Honourable Dudley.
Thank you, Chair. As the Catholic Parliamentary Liaison Research Office pointed out, there could be some validity to the argument that the International Criminal Court, the ICC, has shown a bias against prominent African figures, while ignoring serious human rights violations elsewhere. Of course, President Bashir is not wanted by the ICC for harming Western interests or for violence aimed at Europe or America. He was indicted for genocide and mass murder of African people, black African people, in Darfur, where his regime still targets Sudan's non-Arab and non-Muslim population. There may also be a legitimate legal question about whether President Omar al-Bashir was actually on South African soil when attending the AU summit in Sandton, or whether, by way of a legal fiction, he was on territory temporarily under AU control. Even if we were to accept both these positions, as government and the AU seem to have done, these arguments should have been made while following the due process of international and domestic law. South Africa could, of course, decide to withdraw from the Rome Statute that brought the ICC into being, but only once we have done so will we be free of our obligation to honour the ICC's arrest warrants. Government could also decide to appeal the order granted last week by the North Gauteng High Court and to argue that diplomatic immunity applied to Bashir, exempting him from arrest. Government cannot, however, simply ignore its obligations under international law, act in violation of the Constitution, and display contempt for the High Court, which it has done by allowing Bashir to leave and even assisting him to do so. Yes, it is obvious that government was placed in a difficult and unenviable position during the AU conference in having to balance the risk of massive diplomatic fallout among African countries against its duty to respect the court's judgment. Court orders, however, are not negotiable, and governments cannot play fast and loose with the rule of law. Supremacy of the Constitution and the rule of law are founding provisions of our Constitution. Sadly, government has disregarded the rule of law to its own detriment, to the detriment of South Africa and of Africa. This is a tragic and possibly even fatal mistake in terms of our democracy and the fragile state of democracy in Africa. Thank you.
Thank you. Honourable Gallo.
Thank you very much, Honourable Deputy Speaker. The AIC is not surprised by the contentions that the state plotted to ensure that the Sudanese President Omar al-Bashir safe passage out of the country. Recently, the country was shocked to learn that the Waterkloof military base was used as a landing base for the Gupta's wedding jet. All the above and other incidents should be a clear signal to the people of this country that South Africa is fast becoming a lawlessness nation. The AIC believes if South Africa was run by seamless and value-based leadership, it wouldn't have allowed President Omar al-Bashir to come to South Africa. He was not even supposed to attend the AU summit in the first place. It is common knowledge that President Omar al-Bashir came to power in a coup in 1989 and has since ruled the country with an iron fist, something which led to two rebel groups Sudan Liberation Movement and the Justice and Equality Movement, launching a full-scale rebellion against the Sudanese government in 2003. The reasons for the rebellion were the ongoing economic marginalization and insecurity. President al-Bashir's government responded to the rebellion with the Arab militia, with violent attacks on villages throughout the country. Since 2003, plus minus 1,000 people were killed by the government under the presidency of Omar al-Bashir. So somebody must be accountable for Darfur genocide. In conclusion, Honorable Deputy Speaker, the AIC calls upon this Parliament to uphold the rule of law by investigating as to who plotted President al-Bashir's safe passage out of South Africa, because South Africa is the signatory of the Rome Statute, the act that set up the IEC, which means, therefore, that those found guilty of this serious offense of flouting the court order for President al-Bashir to be arrested must be charged by the court of law and be arrested. And if they are cabinet ministers, they must resign as members of the executive, because we cannot be led by such people.
Honorable Godi.
Thank you, Deputy Speaker, comrades and honorable members. South Africa is a member of the African Union and as such is bound by decisions and resolutions of this continental body. As Pan-Africanists, we have always called for Africa to speak with one voice on matters of international and continental importance. On the matter of the ICC, there are clear resolutions of the AU declaring that no sitting head of state should face trial by the ICC, and for member states not to cooperate with the ICC in this regard. President al-Bashir has been on summits and visits to many countries before. Why this halubalu when he came to South Africa? The court action taken by that reactionary institution is very repulsive and an affront to the national interests of South Africa and the continent. As for the sponsors of this topic, the question is, how patriotic are they? The obvious answer is not at all. They have consistently positioned themselves as the beachheads of imperialism. They are the echo chambers of foreign interests in South Africa. The Haitian revolutionary Citizen Townsend said more than 150 years ago that if anyone wants a dirty job done, be he white or mulatto, they will always get a black man to do it. Morgan Tsvangirai was not the first, and he is certainly not the last. National and continental interests must always supersede any other consideration, legal or otherwise. This is how all non-neo-colonial countries behave. That is how America and Europe behave. The shrill voices of the liberals and their imperialist masters must be ignored and rejected with contempt. I thank you.
Honorable Self.
Deputy Speaker, I think before the Honourable Gordhi speaks with any credibility in this House, he needs to explain to this House who paid his election deposit. The weekend before last, Deputy Speaker, South Africa played host to President Omar al-Bashir. He has been referred to as His Excellency. The only thing he is excellent at is killing people. He is the subject of a warrant for arrest from the International Criminal Court on 5 counts of crimes against humanity involving murder, extermination, forcible transfer, torture, and rape. He is also wanted on 2 counts of war crimes, directing attacks against civilians and pillaging, and 3 counts of genocide. According to conservative estimates, he is thought to have been responsible for the deaths of 300,000 people, fellow South African people, and the displacement of 2.5 million more. Now, South Africa is a signatory to the Rome Statute that established the ICC. Nobody forced us to become a member. We are a member. Article 12.1 of the statute obliges us to accept the jurisdiction of the ICC in respect of crimes against humanity, war crimes, and genocide. Our obligations in this regard are specified in the Implementation Act. Now, when the warrant was first issued in 2009, the then Director General for International Relations and Cooperation, Dr. Ayanda Nsabula, had the following. He said, if today President al-Bashir landed in terms of the provision of the Rome Statute, he would have to be arrested. He went on to say, the ICC has issued a warrant for President al-Bashir, and this requires signatory states to execute the warrant should he land on their soil. Not only that, our Parliament passed a law, and that law is extremely explicit about what would happen if a situation like this arises. Now, that law was the Implementation Act, and it was debated in this chamber on Tuesday, the 11th of June 2002. I remember it very clearly, unlike the Honourable Minister. On that occasion, Advocate Johnny DeLonge said on behalf of the ANC the following. He said, if there is some person somewhere who thinks that he or she can commit genocide or war crimes and hide in this country, this legislation will not allow that. There's an obligation on our prosecuting authorities to prosecute such persons. And then he goes on to say, and if we do not do that, we will definitely collaborate with the International Court to bring such people to book. The then Minister of Justice, Penal Maduna, repeated this. He said, if indeed we choose not to prosecute them in our country, we will be required to surrender them to the ICC. Then the Honourable Landers, who has now been elevated to the position as Deputy Minister of International Relations, said in the same debate, I reiterate, for the perpetrators of genocide, crimes against humanity and war crimes, the world has just become a small place and the number of safe havens has been drastically reduced. Well, under his watch and presumably with his concurrence, the Deputy Minister made the world a bigger place for President al-Bashir and provided a convenient safe haven for him to escape arrest. It's not as if President al-Bashir arrived unexpectedly. On the 28th of May, the Registrar of the ICC reminded the South African Embassy in The Hague of our obligations to arrest al-Bashir if he arrived here. On the 13th of June, the same day al-Bashir arrived here, the Registrar was directed to formally inform the competent authorities in South Africa of their obligation. And yet the competent authorities sat on their hands like that Honourable Minister. But what is far worse is that government did not merely cock its snook at the international obligations in defiance of Section 231(4) of the Constitution, it did so to our own courts. The Gauteng High Court handed down an order prohibiting President al-Bashir from leaving the country. Yet he left, and all sorts of people apparently colluded to allow this. President al-Bashir's jet was moved to Waterkloof Air Force Base and hidden in a hangar. Al-Bashir was apparently escorted there by a police protection scheme so that he could he could escape arrest. The very same policeman that should have arrested him. The ministers in the security cluster reportedly had a meeting to plan for this contingency. The Border Control Coordinating Committee was told in an SMS to give instructions to all border posts. There can be no doubt, Deputy Speaker, that our government colluded to defy the International Criminal Court and our courts. And in the process, Deputy Speaker, it has given South Africa the reputation as an unreliable country in the international community, a country that does not honor its international commitments. But perhaps worse than this, it has undermined the rule of the law and the Constitution by willfully ignoring a court order. Let me remind members of what the Supreme Court of Appeal said in a judgment handed down in March this year in the so-called Somali Association case. The judges said, it is most dangerous thing for a litigant, particularly a State Department and senior officials in its employ, to willfully ignore an order of court. It cannot be left to the litigants to themselves judge whether or not an order of court should be obeyed. No democracy can survive if court orders can be shunned and trampled on as happened here. That the state must obey the law is fundamental to any civilized society. We could not have expressed it better, and the government should hang its head in shame.
The Honourable Deputy Minister of Justice and Correctional Services, responsible for justice and constitutional development.
Deputy Speaker, as previous ANC speakers have said, an investigation is being conducted into the circumstances of President Bashir's departure, and an affidavit providing that the detail must be submitted to court by Thursday. I'm therefore not going to comment on any of the allegations made here or in the media on the circumstances of President Bashir's departure, but the Honourable Self and his colleagues in the DA and the Honourable Mngwango would know that government issued a statement denying any knowledge of a meeting that had taken place. In discussing this matter, we need to take into consideration the importance to South Africa of fulfilling our obligations to the International Criminal Court, but also the importance to us of the African Union and our relations with other states on the continent. We recognize our international obligations, but at the same time we have to be mindful of our obligations to the African Union and our interests in the region and the continent. South Africa was asked to host the AU summit, which was held a week ago. I wish that the honourable members would listen to the argument. They might learn something. South Africa was asked to host the AU summit that was held a week ago. This summit is attended by the heads of state and government of all AU member states. This includes Sudan. We believe that, in spite of the ICC arrest warrant, that President Bashir had immunity to attend an international summit as head of state. And that is different to his attendance in South Africa on the invitation of the South African government or for some other function. Our government's legal argument was along these lines, namely that President al-Bashir, as a sitting head of state, has diplomatic immunity in terms of the Diplomatic Immunities and Privileges Act of 2001. He was attending the AU summit which took place in our country. And basically, if you look at the articles of the Rome Statute...
Order, honourable members.
If you look at the articles of the Rome Statute, one can argue that the combined effect of Article 27 and Article 98 is that a state party may not claim immunity for its own officials, but it must respect the immunity of the officials of a non-state party, which is Sudan. We do not yet have the High Court's reasons for their order, as these are only being handed down tomorrow. One is therefore not in a position here today to discuss the legal arguments in great detail. But it must also be added, another court could have come to a different decision, and that the option of an appeal is one we will consider. However, it would be premature and speculative to even open such a discussion. But let's look at other international cases involving immunity, cases which support the argument that sitting heads of state have immunity. The Pinochet case in Britain is one that's been referred to quite often. And please listen, and the House of Lords in Britain accepted that serving heads of state retain absolute immunities, the so-called ratione persona, that is, immunity on account of their official status, irrespective of the nature of the crime alleged, unless waived by the sending state. The Lordships, yes, denied immunity to Pinochet in his capacity as a former head of state. However, they made it clear that if he'd still been an acting head of state, this immunity in international law would have continued to subsist. One of the lords in the Pinochet case said, Senator Pinochet is not a serving head of state. If he were, he could not be extradited. It would be an intolerable affront to the Republic of Chile to arrest or detain him. And in the decision of the Democratic of Congo versus Belgium, the International Court of Justice reaffirmed the same point. It's interesting to note that Nigeria, where President al-Bashir visited in July 2013, also did not arrest him, and the ICC subsequently absolved Nigeria of liability for the failure of its security forces to arrest, as the pretrial chamber of the ICC ruled that Nigeria has justifiable reasons for its failure to arrest President al-Bashir. Nigeria submitted that it did not invite President al-Bashir to undertake a visit. They argued that the Sudanese president appeared in Nigeria to attend the special summit of the African Union on HIV and AIDS, tuberculosis and malaria, which took place in Abuja. South Africa, correctly, has been a vocal proponent of the establishment of the International Criminal Court. We believe, as we still do, that an independent and objective instrument was needed to bring an end to the heinous crimes against humanity and the violation of human rights, which were then very prevalent on the continent and in the world as a whole. We believe, as we still do, that those who committed such crimes must be prosecuted and punished by an impartial body empowered by international cooperation to defend the universal values of justice. The matter relating to President al-Bashir, therefore, is of a major concern, and we view the allegations levelled against him in a serious light. However, the ICC is not the court we signed up for. It has diverted from its mandate and allowed itself to be influenced by powerful non-member states. We signed up for a court that was going to hold human beings accountable for their war crimes, regardless of where they were from. We perceive it as tending to act as a proxy instrument for these states who see no need to subject themselves to its discipline, to persecute African leaders and effect regime change on the continent. It is being used as a court against Africa, deliberately oblivious to the fact that African countries themselves were vocal in their support for the necessity of such a mechanism, with, for example, Senegal being the first country to ratify the Rome Statute. So let's look at the ICC. 36 people have been indicted by the ICC since 2005. All of them are from Africa. And the record of these cases is not good, with only 2 people found guilty and charges against 8 being dismissed or withdrawn or them being found not guilty. Responding to criticism that its focus is too narrow, the ICC has since launched preliminary examinations in a number of countries such as Afghanistan, Georgia, Guinea, Colombia, Honduras and Korea. But even these matters are not without controversy, as some will argue that the non-African cases are going nowhere. For example, the Georgian investigation started in 2008 and the Afghanistan investigation in 2007, and what results have they shown, if any? The court's jurisdiction is affected by the non-participation or non-cooperation of many countries, most notably the United States, which dropped out in May 2002 after initially signing up at the last minute. The US government has consistently opposed an international court that could hold US military and political leaders to uniform global standard of justice. In addition, the US has asked many countries not to agree or transfer US nationals to the ICC in order to gain immunity for its citizens, and have threatened as leverage termination of economic aid, withdrawal of military assistance and other measures if countries wouldn't agree to bilateral agreements. Both the US and Israel objected when Palestine joined the ANC. And when the Palestinian leaders applied, Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu said they'd chosen the path of confrontation. The US State Department said it didn't believe that Palestine is a sovereign state and therefore didn't qualify to join. They also said that they advised Palestine and Israel to rather resolve their differences through direct negotiation.
and they've threatened to cut off funding to the Palestinian Authority if they take Israelis to the ICC. The fact remains that Africa has been the focus of a court which is based in Europe. Given the continent's history of colonialism, this problem is obvious. The African Union, which represents the continent's governments, has campaigned heavily, contending that no sitting head of state should be prosecuted. There's much criticism that the ICC is manipulated by the West. What Africa is saying is that the ICC, as it is constituted, should no longer have jurisdiction over Africa. All member states need to be signatory for there to be universal justice. Otherwise, we should rely on an African Court of Justice and human rights. And we're concerned about the manipulation of the ICC by European powers. And let's take the example of the former president of Cote d'Ivoire, Laurent Gbagbo. Independent media's foreign editor, Shannon Ibrahim, argues that France has a vested interest in ensuring that the leaders of the Ivory Coast and other French-speaking countries toe the line in terms of their economic policies. They must not suggest launching their own currency, because that would be the end of the franc in West Africa. And the greatest threat to this goal was the emergence of Laurent Gbagbo, who won the elections in 2000 and wanted to break away from the former colonial powers' economic stranglehold. To pressurize Gbagbo, France closed the doors of the French banks operating in the country, which controlled more than 50% of the banking sector, making it impossible for Gbagbo to pay salaries. The ICC then became the vehicle through which to neutralize Gbagbo. The French Justice Minister went to The Hague in 2011 to ask that Gbagbo be transferred to the ICC, where he was held for 15 months without charge. The ICC, which is primarily funded by France, Germany and the EU, used the 15 months to try and collect evidence against Gbagbo. But in June 2013, the decision of the pre-trial chamber was that there was not enough evidence to send Gbagbo to trial. Instead of releasing him, the ICC set out for another 7 months trying to find evidence against him. Gbagbo was denied bail 9 times. He's supposed to be tried this year, but the trial date keeps getting postponed, and it is now in November. The reason, argues Ibrahim, is to keep him remanded until elections have taken place in the Ivory Coast in October. Some, particularly on the DA side of the House, will say that Africa is not willing nor capable of trying persons accused of war crimes. This is not true. Former President of Chad, Hissène Habré, will be tried for crimes against humanity by a Senegalese court next month. The trial is expected to start on the 20th of July. For the first time in history, a former head of an African state will stand trial in Africa before an internationalized tribunal, the Extraordinary African Chambers in Senegalese courts. And remember, Senegal was the first country to ratify the Rome Statute. The Extraordinary African Court Chamber is an ad hoc court which is set up by the African Union under the principle of universal jurisdiction. Now, Deputy Speaker, without making any comment on the circumstances of President Bashir's departure, what would have happened? Because it is still before the courts, you idiot. I withdraw that.
Point of order.
I withdraw that.
No. Sorry.
Yes.
Sorry. The honourable member can't just make a statement that is derogatory to another member and then just simply say, I withdraw. Deputy Speaker, you cannot have a member in this House calling another member an idiot. It's no wonder this man's only a deputy minister.
Go ahead, honourable member, and do the right thing. You know what to do.
Chair, I've withdrawn. I'm sorry the DA have heckled me throughout the whole speech, so I should have restrained myself.
Order, honourable members. Honourable members, order. You can't be screaming like that, honourable members. There is no justification for screaming in the House. There is no justification for screaming in the House. Go ahead.
Without making any comments on the circumstances of President Bashir's departure, what would have happened if South Africa had arrested him? What would the response have been from the African Union? What would our standing have been regarding other countries in the region? I'm aware that some members of the DA...
Honourable member, order. Proceed, honourable member.
Thank you.
I'm aware that some members of the DA wish we were part of the EU and not the AU, but the fact remains we are in Africa, not Europe. If we told United States President George Bush when he visited South Africa and we couldn't arrest him in terms of the ICC because the United States has a veto on the Security Council for the referral of people from states that are not members of the ICC. So if we had said to him that in terms of the Convention Against Torture and our Prevention of Torture Act, that he couldn't leave South Africa until a court had decided whether he could be charged, do we think the United States would have just stood idly by and waited? As Professor Stephen Friedman said, and I quote, "How do you prevent a foreign head of state leaving the country? You're basically declaring war if you do that." I raise these questions in the context of a legal process that has far from been exhausted and that may well ultimately emerge with a different decision. The Honourable Motlakapi has purported to speak on behalf of the Sudanese people. I'm not sure on what basis he assumes that. There is a statement on record from the former Vice President of South Sudan that if South Africa had arrested President Bashir, of the devastating effects of South Africa's relations with the Sudanese people. Some of those who criticise South Africa for not arresting President Bashir have never, not once, Honourable Kola Barnard, raised with the same intensity any concern over the situation in Darfur. And at the same time, gross human rights violations committed by non-signatory countries go unpunished and often uncriticised. It is time that the Rome Statute be reviewed to ensure all UN members were subject to the same level of scrutiny and the same justice. To have two standards of justice is mere hypocrisy. Thank you.
Honourable Deputy Speaker. Honourable Deputy Speaker.
Honourable members.
Honourable Deputy Speaker.
Yes, Honourable Member.
Honourable Deputy Speaker, may I please address you? Earlier on, you made a reference to the fact that the comments by the Honourable Mngwangu will be looked at very seriously. First of all,
I said to all members,
yes,
like Honourable Mngwangu, yes.
Yes, Honourable Deputy Speaker, I take your point.
Yes.
But when you put on record, one, that we took the manner in which you address Honourable Mngwangu to be picking on him and to be a biased approach to the presiding that you were doing at the time. And secondly, your failure to raise those concerns with other speakers throughout the debate puts in question the manner in which you are presiding over this particular debate, which we feel, had the view of the Presiding Officer been that the matter is sub judice, you should not have allowed it in the first place. And by allowing it, you should have allowed members then to express themselves and that they should have. So we then want to appeal with you, Honourable Deputy Speaker, that you address the matter in a fair manner and to stop the perpetual and persistent bullying on opposition parties, because that stifles progress in this House.
Okay, honourable members, order. Honourable Hlengwa, you are ignoring the reality that I apologized right at the beginning, that I should have spoken about the rules at the beginning. And the reason I spoke to Honourable Mngwangu is that a point of order was raised about him. I wasn't picking him. I had to rule on that matter. And that's the reason why I did that. You have no basis to suggest there was any unfairness on that matter. And I think you are out of order, actually. That concludes the debate and the House is adjourned.